I'm anxiety. Where can I put my stuff?
A new emotion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to make such a good first impression.
What do you mean, we?
I'm Envy. Look at your hair.
Oh, yeah, not happening.
That's ennui.
On what?
It's what you would call the boredom.
What's your name, big fella?
That's embarrassment.
Welcome to headquarters, Embarrassment. Oh, we're doing a fit. No. Oh, nope, going high. Oh, you got a real sweaty palm there, buddy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Animation Fascination. This is episode 125. Now, if you are listening to this on a audio format, you have just heard a snippet of the trailer before us talking it out. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you didn't because of copyright. So, welcome, Stanford.
Hey, thanks.
Back to the old school Animation Fascination for this episode, talking about Pixar's Inside Out Part 2. And I guess I just jump right into it. What was your overall initial thoughts of Pixar 2? Or Pixar 2, Inside Out 2.
Dude, I loved it. It was so funny, so touching, so beautifully animated, so thought-provoking, and just absolutely terrific time in the movies. I was a happy customer for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I would agree with all that as well. I was cautiously optimistic going into this one because I was curious what they would do as far as the story for this one.
Yes.
They did have a good setup with it at the end of the first film with Riley going into puberty here, and we kind of go back a little bit before that 1 year jump ahead at the end of the last movie to kind of set up this movie. So I liked how they did that, but yeah, overall I enjoyed this. I thought it was a good progression of how it's also growing up with Riley and how having the more complex emotions as she's getting older. And I've also watched some of those press junkets that they've been doing where a lot of the actors have been talking about almost like the 7-Up series, not the soda, but the documentary series, to maybe do something similar to that with the Inside Out films with Riley, whereas you check in every so often with Riley at another stage in her life, and how that's affecting her emotions and what they're doing with that. And I think I saw one where Maya Hawke and Amy Poehler were whoever when Riley finds her first love or something like that, how anxiety and happiness would be working together in that one. And probably embarrassment would be in there a little bit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that's an interesting idea, and that does leave the concept open, for whatever they would like to do with the coming films later on. So now, also for anyone who hasn't listened to Animation Fascination before, this podcast focuses on the world of animation. And usually in each episode sometimes we'll feature the latest news from around the animation industry, and all the times we'll just do a main topic discussing a TV series, a film, or something else. But whether it's traditionally hand-drawn, computer-generated, or stop-motion, if it's animated, it's up for discussion for us to geek out about. So, like we said, we're talking about Pixar's Inside Out 2. And in this one, now, a lot of the cast from the original film came back as far as the emotions. In that, we got Amy Poehler as Joy returning. We got Phyllis
Smith.
Yeah, Phyllis Smith, who people may recognize as Phyllis from The Office, back as Sadness. Louis Black as Anger. But then we have Tony Hale, who people who are fans of Pixar in particular may recognize as Forky from Toy Story 4, but he's replacing Bill Hader as Fear in this film. And then Lisa Lapira is replacing Mindy Kaling as Disgust in this. So we have one last cast member from The Office in this than we did in the first film, which I was kind of bummed about that because I remember it being like some kind of pay discrepancy where I think that Amy Poehler's offered a certain amount, and then everybody else was offered this other amount. And because of that, that's why Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling kind of walked away at that point. Which ultimately, I think that Tony Hale and Lisa did a good job of playing fear and disgust in this, and they do a good job of kind of matching the like the kind of voices that like because Bill Hader's got a very very distinctive voice, and Tony Hale also has a very distinctive voice, but somehow he's doing Tony Hale as Bill Hader as Tony Hale.
Exactly. Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It does.
And then like same thing with Lisa, as discussed, just because like also Mindy Kaling has a very distinct voice too. So those are two very interesting voices to have to replace for this because they're so very distinctive in here. But then in this film we also had the new motions that came in. So we had Ao Edebari as Envy. People watch The Bear. I have not watched that yet, but I know she's on that. She was also April O'Neil in last year's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film that came out. We had Adele. She's got a very French name. Adele Exarchopoulos as Ennui. And then we had Paul Walter Hauser as Embarrassment, and I think that and Maya Hawke as Anxiety, and Maya Hawke, people if they've watched Stranger Things may recognize her as, also she's just Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke's.
I was gonna say she's the offspring of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. So
and then
what a cool voice she has too. She's so good in the role.
Oh yeah, she was great as Anxiety. And then we also had Diane Lane back.
Yeah, and Tom McLaughlin are back.
As her parents.
Riley's parents.
Yeah. So I guess from here we can kind of get into like the plot breakdown a little bit, and kind of from there talk about like our favorite parts of what came up like within those. So this kind of first section is Riley's world turns upside down. So it's been a year since we last saw Riley, and she's now a fresh-faced 13-year-old on the brink of high school. Before she even steps into those hollowed halls, she's got a big challenge ahead: hockey camp. So Riley's emotions, joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust have been busy setting up a new area in her mind called her sense of self, a hub for all the core memories and feelings that shape who she is. And really quickly here, some Disney synergy where like I felt like the sense of self area. If anyone has seen James Cameron's Avatar films, did you get a Pandora vibe?
No, that's a really good point, Mark. I hadn't thought about that. Absolutely. Yeah. It has very much that kind of feel, to it.
Yeah, if you go back and watch Inside Out 2 again, and you go to the whole sense of self area in Riley's mind, I had a very, I don't remember what the name of the tree is, but like essentially the tree of life.
That's that Tree of Life thing, yeah.
With the bioluminescence, and like it even makes like the sense of self looks like a tree in it. So I thought that was kind of like a little interesting thing. But I liked that whole visualization of how they did that too, and it was like the memories were essentially like planting those seeds of a sense of self. And I liked in here how that broadened kind of this idea of who like Riley is and how Riley perceives herself to be. What did you think of like that whole concept they added into this movie?
It made perfect sense and just propelled the film forward. And so I thought it was a really great narrative structure, but also like a really, I think, a good thing to add, because, it seems to me like around that age, or maybe even just a little earlier, you really are starting to build your set of kind of core values, right? Or just like what's important to you. And anyway, I thought it really worked, both narratively and also just like as a reflection of life, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And then so like we kind of get that like we re-see that scene again of the like the alarm going off and like the puberty stuff showing up.
When the puberty alarm goes off, yeah, just upends everybody.
Yeah, so we kind of return to that denouement we got from the first film. So like as everything seems stable, curveball gets thrown their way, a blaring puberty alarm goes off, hinting that chaos to come. If that wasn't enough, mind workers swoop in to upgrade the console and leave a cryptic warning that the others are coming. Insert Jin from Lost here saying, others, the others are coming.
Yeah,
exactly. So I was waiting for Michael Emerson and a few others to show up in Riley's mind. That would be kind of funny. But yeah, so after that, so they get the new faces in headquarters. So the morning hits, and actually before we get there, so we kind of see like this bunk, like sleep area for like one Riley sleeping, like where
the emotions all go sleep. Yeah,
go to sleep too, and they all have which Airbnb has been on this kick lately of like redoing like these areas. So yeah, for Pixar they did the house from Up, which is weird too because there's one like 30 minutes from you in Utah that people actually recreated.
Yeah, and but it's a private residence, right? Yeah. I know that sometimes they offer some tours, but yeah, you can't stay there or really go in. But yeah,
which apparently the Airbnb one you could have also had it lifted in a crane, so if you wanted it
I
was like, nah, I'd
pass.
I'd be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another one that they're doing right now is headquarters from Inside Out, which is interesting too because I didn't check to see where it is, but it almost looks like a sky tower from like an airport.
Yes.
And then it feels like that's been like renovated to essentially be like in there. So it's got like each of like the emotions bunk areas in there.
Yeah, and the windows look like headquarters and yeah.
They also recently did Edna Mode's house too, I believe. So they've already done 3 Pixar locations. And this, I believe it's like Airbnb's like luxury like tier for it. So you have to be a super big animation fan and an influencer with like a lot of followers, or someone that is an animation fan that's also very well off.
Yeah, they can fork out the bucks to
or someone that works at Pixar for whoever, whichever one of these Airbnbs that are recreated to make look like that are at, or you can just, I don't know, if you have enough imagination, just make it yourself, just like our friends Marco and Trevor did with the Pizza Planet truck. But yeah, so morning hits and things immediately. Oh wait, before we move there, before I forget about it, is that I noticed like how each of the emotions had like their little areas like decorated, and all kind of fit everyone's vibe and their emotion. But I liked the little nod and Easter egg that we saw that Joy had made, like like interpretation, like a artistic, like like metal. It looked like interpretation of Bing Bong on her shelf there, and I was like, that's a nice little nod back to Bing Bong.
It was a really cool touch. Film. Yeah, and that little alcove she's got in her bunk, I like that too. I was so glad that you noticed it as well.
Yeah, and then Sylvia also noticed it too. So
Sylvia liked it,
and I don't know that maybe this speaks to something like more on a deeper level, like within the film, that because Joy is part of Riley, that mean very, very subconsciously that Riley still remembers Bing Bong, even though he's supposed to have, like faded
into oblivion or whatever. Or wherever he went. Yeah.
There's still a faint enough of a memory of her imaginary friend Bing Bong deep within her mind that her joy emotion has a decoration of Bing Bong on her shelf in that little cubby area. So I thought that was, that would actually maybe be a good question to ask, like Kelsey Mann, who directed this one, and be like, so deep thoughts.
Yeah,
Because
the Bing Bong.
because these thoughts or emotions also exhibit other emotions, but also have to hide other emotions in here. What does that speak to on a deep philosophical level? That
Yeah,
joy as an emotion can have their own existential crisis within the mind of another being. Now, do these emotions then have a headquarters inside of their heads? Which I really am blown away by the animation that they've done in the first one and this one, of kind of like articulating like how these characters are made up. Because if you really look at like the fine detail of like their hands or like their heads, you can see that they're all just kind of made up of like these very small particulates that are all kind of very, stitched together, but it's not like they're not like a solid material, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a great way to describe it, Mark. I saw it in IMAX. I mean, I noticed it from in the first film too, but I was so impressed with how those characters are designed. Yeah, they're just like these collection of little dots, in a way.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. So much more beautiful detail in animation.
Yeah, I agree. So warning hits, and then things immediately start going haywire. The upgraded console makes Riley overreact to everything, which I thought was funny. I was like, "Yep, that's
Welcome to teenagers."
That's how dealing with a teenager is. I was like, I understood that. I understood that reference. Oh, I remember that. Oh, yep, I remember that too. And I liked the sneaks into at least Riley's mom's head at this point. She's like, well, there's a preview of the next 10 years.
Yeah. I think probably every parent could appreciate that, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, yeah. It's like, I'm not going to tell her, but she does smell. Which, yeah, teenagers smell. Boys and girls. But the upgraded console, like I said, makes Riley overreact to everything. At hockey camp, she gets hit with the news that her best friends Bree and Grace are heading to different high school. Cue the stress, which is, I thought was interesting too, where they worked in this flashback to her meeting these friends, which seemingly I think would have been in that like 1 year
it was
jump, because obviously in the first film like they just had moved here. I was like, that sucks. I was thinking about it because like Riley in the first film has that whole like, that's like the whole reason she's like trying to run away like back to Minnesota is because like she doesn't feel like she fits in. She doesn't have any friends here. So that the fact that she already made these very tight friendships with these two girls over like that past year, and then like already has to like deal with losing, I guess, seeing them on a day-to-day
not being
basis
able to
in
be with
school.
them at school. Yeah.
Which I mean, I guess they'll just have to work at it harder. But like everyone knows that like first when you go to a new school, it becomes harder to do that, and then when you would then graduate from that school, it would be then even harder to do that. And so as you become older and older, it's harder and harder to keep in touch with certain people, because it has to be like a two-way thing of both sides of them trying to keep in touch with that. But I was like, man, she is like going through it these past few years. I feel bad for Riley. So on cue, the four new emotions crash into headquarters. Envy, which is, as I said earlier, is AO, as Envy, Ennui is Adele, not Adele, the singer. Embarrassment is Paul Walter Hauser.
This probably this French actress, right? I don't know.
Yeah, she's got a very Eastern European last name. And then we got Paul Walter Hauser as Embarrassment, which good on Paul Walter Hauser for snagging this role, because not super a lot of a spoiler, but there's a lot of just him making sounds.
Yeah.
This movie where he eventually says like a sentence, but
He doesn't talk a lot. Yeah.
but he did embody the role, and I thought he did a good job
Oh yeah,
in it.
absolutely.
And I really liked that the character Embarrassment in here too, because Embarrassment kind of becomes conflicted with. We'll get to it, but like how they kind of help to bridge the gap between the original 5 emotions. Yeah, so he bridges that gap between the new emotions there, and I liked. Now, what did you think about this introduction here too? Because we get a little kind of snippet with each of them. So we get anxiety, envy, ennui, embarrassment. And the emotions are here to stay, and they're ready to shake things up. Anxiety, in particular, has some strong ideas about keeping Riley on her toes, often imagining the worst case scenarios. Which I don't remember where, or I think, it was Kevin Smith actually. I saw him recently in the past couple of months, where he had said he had gone to like a mental health clinic last year, where he said that anxiety is the future, like is set in the future, and depression is set in the past. So that's why you should always try to live in the present. So neither of those things like overwhelmingly overcomes you at that point. So I thought that was very well played with how they had anxiety in this, basically, living to that mantra of like,
oh yeah, everything in the future.
And I also liked how she had all the baggage. I was like, anxiety has all that baggage. I see what you did there. But yeah, and then this little snippet of nostalgia, which I thought was funny too, where they're like, "Oh, you're a little early. You don't have to come back until Riley's been through 2 high school reunions. I think they said 2 high school reunions
And like your best friend's wedding, kind of
best friend's wedding, and like I think like some former love or something like that." So
it's funny. It's a good joke.
Yeah. Like nostalgia's like, you guys remember last year?
This little old lady that comes out. Yeah. Their
But
cup of tea or whatever.
I'm assuming if we get an Inside Out 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it may be. Now, see, like I know that you and I kind of share the same thing with like Toy Story, where it's like 1 through 3 is like a great trilogy, and 4 is kind of like it's still a good film, but it's more of like a epilogue, if anything. And we're still very I don't know, kind of cautiously optimistic about like what 5 even would be for that, outside of I would like, this is just a quick tangent, I would like Toy Story 5 to effectively be a prequel. So maybe you don't call it Toy Story 5 at that point, maybe call it Toy Story : something else, but it's like about Andy's dad. And like I know like the last film was really heavily about Woody, but Woody's always kind of been the main character, and Buzz is the supporting character, as much as DeMillan may not agree with that. But you could have like that whole film be about Andy's dad, and then something, we'll get to it, because then how this ties into this, like, and the reason that Woody doesn't like remember any of that, or like has this whole thing in the second film, is because he's got all these repressed emotions about like how he had this connection to Andy's dad, and that's why he doesn't remember it, because he's repressed that stuff, because like something very sad happened with Andy's father that like he doesn't want to remember. And like that would be another good Pixar film, because it would be something that would make you cry. Probably.
Yeah.
But
no, interesting idea, Mark. Really interesting.
Yeah, but I don't know what they're going to do for it. It probably won't be that, but I think that could be a cool idea for it, and then that way it feels different than the other films already. But so from that, we get to this next section with the clash of the emotions, where joy and anxiety kind of immediately butt heads over how Riley should handle hockey camp. Joy wants her to enjoy it, but anxiety insists on a strict focus on practice. Anxiety's drastic measures include dumping Riley's sense of self into the back of her mind and locking the old emotions in a glass jar or whisking them away to a dark vault, which they kind of set this up a little bit earlier where Joy had like made this makeshift like pinball spring thing to shoot like the repressed memories to the back of the mind, which I like this little bit of like setup, for the eventual payoff by the end of the film, and like how like nothing's wasted in here too. It's like all integral to like build to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing.
It's an exceptional script, I think. Exceptional.
Yeah. I agree. And this is like one of the first cool things. I mean, it's not one of the first. One of the cool things in this film is like when they go to this vault and their repressed emotions. I think this is where we get the A113 Easter egg because it's in Roman numerals, but like the above the vault, it looks like the letter A, and then I'm
oh, nice. Okay, I'll have to pay attention to that, Mark. I didn't notice that.
And I only think it's A113 because the last bit of it is like the three
like
ones.
Roman numeral 3, yeah.
And I'm not too familiar with a lot of Roman numerals. I know like M is like 1,000. I think C is 100, which makes sense because
MCM is 90.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it makes sense because M would be what millennium, C would be century. I'm figuring this out as I'm saying it in my head. I was like, oh, that actually makes sense. MC, yeah. So there you go. But yeah, so I think that's where the A113 is. I didn't spot the Pizza Planet truck in this. I'm assuming Marco did, and you guys can probably check that out at the Pizza Planet truck.
Yeah, I'll be anxious to hear where the Pizza Planet truck is. I didn't see it either, but then also
it's probably somewhere in the mind, obviously, somewhere, or it could have been driven by a hockey camp.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a big slice of pizza in the stream.
It's in the stream of consciousness. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, I liked like this whole area here too. I thought was interesting with like. Now, in this like vault, I like this mixture of animation that we don't normally see from Pixar. So I thought this was a cool kind of deviation from like Pixar norms. So like you get Bluefy, which I think is Rick.
The actor who voices Bluefy.
Yeah, Ron Funches.
Yeah,
Bluefy. Yeah, where it's just basically like a Blue's Clues, Dora the Explorer kind of character, which reminds me we might need somebody else's help here. Pouchy.
Hey, Pouchy.
Yeah. So if Feminine's watching
some
this
dynamite
review, yeah, that got weird. Like to jump ahead really quick, later in the film where like Anger's just like reaching into Pouchy's mouth. I'm like, this also reminded me of like because my son watched Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse.
It's Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Younger, it's like
Toodles,
I have three
right?
things. Yeah, Toodles is like, I have three things. The fourth one's a surprise that we'll find out what it is later. Which I thought maybe they could have made a little bit more of a joke towards that in there, which I thought could have been funny. But yeah, Pouchy and Bluefy here is part of like that kind of Blue's Clues, like toddler backyardigans, where it's like the animated character talking.
Yeah, it's like interacting
to the yeah. So I like this breaking the fourth wall here and essentially talking to the camera, which is funny because then we get it from the perspective of the emotions, and he's literally just talking
to the wall of the vault.
They're like, I think he's not all there. But I don't recall who did the voice of Pouchy.
It's a guy James... from Austin Johnson, who's I remember him from Saturday Night Live, but I don't know what else he is doing. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought uh, I liked the whole sequence there. But then we also got this other character that was essentially like a PlayStation 2
Yes.
graphics, and I liked how they even edited, or not edited, but like filmed or well, animated it in such a way where it looked like he just pulled the character out of like a PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah,
with,
and
like,
it moved that way too. So there was
Yeah,
it wasn't like total fluidity, right? It kind of it was cool.
was trying to like
very
jump
clever.
and go through the opening of the vault, and kept like just jumping in this weird way to go around. And like Disgust had like a crush on him, and we find out that Riley on her Mount Crushmore also has a crush on this video game character, as well as the boy that we saw at the end of the first film that we don't see again in this one. But I enjoyed that whole sequence there. Like, what did you think about, and the fact that they're kind of using like more varied animation, like in this
I
this
thought it
part
was
of
so
the film?
clever, and it looked great, and I thought it brought some real visual interest to it, which they used in the first film too. You know, when they went,
Yeah.
And then so that was why I liked it a lot. I don't know what else really just to say. I thought it was extremely clever.
Agreed. So we'll keep Pouchy up on the screen for now, just in case we need it.
Hey, Pouchy.
Any help from here out? I don't know if we'll need TNT, but maybe we'll see. Which is, we also met Riley's deep dark secret.
Yeah, the deep dark secret.
Vault, which
if you remind me of Snowball or whatever that is, or Snow from
from Frozen. If you're watching or listening to this and you did not stay through to the end of the credits of Inside Out 2,
you should
make sure. Yeah, you should. There's a mid-credit scene and a end credit scene, and the very end credit scene revolves around finding out what Riley's deep dark secret is, and we won't spoil it for you here.
Yeah.
So that you can go watch it, and you can go and give credit and appreciation to all of the names that you see listed in the credits there as you're watching to wait for that at that point. So from meeting these characters and getting out of the vault there, during that time, meanwhile, anxiety starts brewing up a storm, creating negative memories to form a corrupted sense of self. Believing this will prepare Riley for a better, quote unquote, future. The old emotions, however, aren't out of the game yet. They break free and set off on a mission to retrieve Riley's sense of self, not sense of elf. I think elf would be that Lance character that just broke out of there too. He looked kind of like a Cloud Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, like from Final Fantasy. Is what he reminded me of. Yeah.
Like a mixture of like a Super Smash Brothers too, because it looked like when they showed the game that they were from, it looked like it was like one of those kind of like fighting games, possibly. And that could be a good crossover for them, for this character to show up in Wreck-It Ralph 3 if they ever do a Wreck-It Ralph 3 movie. Which speaking of that, it's not really a correlation, but there is another Easter egg earlier in the film. There was a Four Town poster on Riley's wall.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I liked that little callback to Turning Red.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
which I think would have been funny too. We'll get to it, but like when they ask her what her favorite band is, and she names like off like a band, I thought it would have been funny if she had said Four Town. Yeah. That could have been a little bit funny. I guess that might have been like a callback band for her, because we don't really know what year this takes place in. Although maybe based on those graphics, maybe it is around the same time as Turning Red, unless Riley just likes playing older games. But who knows? So here we get the journey through the mind. And in this, they come up with a plan where like one of the emotions has to get like shot back through the series of pneumatic tubes that goes back to the headquarters there. And ultimately it ends up being sadness that has to sneak back in headquarters. And the rest of the original emotions venture deep into the back of Riley's mind. So they find themselves like this. And so like during this, we get this whole kind of like sequence where like Riley's dealing with like different stuff, and because of like that corrupted sense of self, it creates that chasm, which becomes a
Sarcasm. That's one of my favorite scenes. So great.
Yeah, it was these two films, and like speaking about later, the Cloud with a Chance of Meatballs films are some of the best use of puns and like wordplay in like modern animated films, or like
good point,
and how they cleverly use them, because they work that stuff, like the stream of consciousness, the sarcasm, like the back of the mind is like literally in the Mount Rushmore is like Mount Rushmore. So, and like we had the imagination land in here too, like in the pillow fort, which I really enjoyed that sequence because it's essentially the sweat box. It's like all basically all of the. It would have been awesome if they called all these characters that were in that pillow fort, if they called them Imagineers, because that would have fit too.
Yeah,
and then they could have just
an imagination land.
Yeah, and then Bluefy could have just turned to the camera and winked, be like, you guys get it, Imagineers. Or I do wonder if, since that is Imagination Land, if there is a Figment Easter egg, hidden somewhere deep in there.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed how this little sequence with them is essentially like anxiety, like Skyping in or zooming in to talk to the Imagineers or the animators here that were like animating all of these like plethora of things that could go wrong for Riley, and like how they're all at like, if you're familiar with our logo, like the animator square there, so I thought that was
cool. They're all at an animation table, drawing stuff.
I'm sure some of the characters in here too are like modeled or characterized of animators that were working on the film.
I was thinking too, they probably had a lot of fun with that.
This whole sequence was great too, like, and where they're just like, oh, maybe she or like Anger's like, she gives flowers to the other team. He's like, what? I don't always have to be angry.
Anger's so great.
That goes back into the deep philosophical thing. Is like, so if anger isn't always angry, what does that mean? Does that mean that she angrily gave those flowers to the other team?
Well, and Joy, a couple times breaks down and is crying because she's sad.
Yeah.
They are not tears of joy, they're tears of heartbreak.
Yeah, which that kind of leads me to like this next point here too. It's like before we get to back to it. So like they find themselves at the base of the mountain of the bad memories, where Riley's sense of self is like precariously perched, and that's where they're going to eventually try to get back to headquarters. So this is kind of like where you just said like in this sequence too, like Joy, like they're trying to get up to like the higher level to like where all the core memories are, to basically walk on top of that to get to the back. This, which is sure to become like a meme worthy thing, where like Joy is like bends in half and like turns around. She's like, it's really hard to like always be this. And starts to break down a little bit there. And like, this was, I think, one of like the most like devastating like lines, like at least, I don't know, like it hit me very, very hard in the movie was so she said like, maybe this is what happens when you grow up, you feel less joy. I was like, geez, it's like, dang it, Pixar, always hitting with the deep cuts. And with like, what did you,
with truth? I mean, that's what has been one of my favorite things about Pixar films is I just feel like they can convey the human experience in such interesting ways. Here we've got this very fanciful how the the construct of these emotions running around in this girl's mind, Or then we all have them.
Yeah.
But they're speaking the truth. There are these real truths that come out of it, and we'll get there. But that's, I think, really evident in the resolution of everything in the third act, and it makes total sense, and it's because it's the truth. I think these are universal truths of the human experience is how I see it.
Yeah, agreed. So from here, they cause they use Pouchy again.
Hey, Pouchy.
So he can get all of the dynamite out of his mouth to cause this avalanche of the core memories to basically
the wave of
for
emotions.
them to ride is like a wave. Yeah. See, they're good with these literal puns. So this wave of emotions that they managed to retrieve and race back to headquarters. So like all of these memories end up, going back into that Pandora bioluminescent area for like their sense of self. We'll see in a little bit. But back at the control center, chaos is reigning. Anxiety's corrupted sense of self has Riley spiraling into an anxiety attack right in the middle of her final hockey game, which this was like another like really well done scene. Like just the way that they were able to articulate this on screen. Like recently too, like between there's Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. That film did a great job of showing him having an anxiety attack in that film and really well articulating it. And like people know me also that Ted Lasso that show also does like a great job of correlating and exhibiting like how an anxiety attack or a panic attack feels, because they're slightly different but similar things. And this is, I think, the point in the film where like you really feel as deeply as you can that you are in Riley's mind. Like you're feeling all this. They do a good job with like the sound.
Oh yeah,
editing and
it's
mixing
so
here
well
too.
Crafted. Yeah,
I can only imagine like watching this movie with headphones on, or like eventually like if you're lucky enough to have one like an Apple Vision Pro, like one of like having that on, then just like being fully immersed in that, and then also having that sound mix of like, it might be too much honestly for people that have anxiety or panic attacks to be watching that part of the movie if you're watching it that way too, because I was watching it in IMAX and I was already kind of like, it's like, man, like this was like besides the line that we talked about that Joy had in the film, like this was the other scene that like really like hit me and like heavily like made me break down a little bit, and like it got a little rainy from my
misty
face in the theater at that point. But hats off. I was gonna say hands. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, well done to the storytellers at Pixar for being able to articulate that in such a way. I did like the joke of anxiety, like downing like 8 energy drinks
all at the same time. She's got that really wide mouth.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Which
and appropriate just because of the way that character behaves.
Yeah. Which, by the way, like all of the emotions are very well designed to fit their perspective, what they're supposed to be, and I liked how each of them are that way. So we get the scene between Joy and anxiety finally coming to like an understanding. Joy convinces anxiety that Riley doesn't need to change herself in order to have a better future. So that brings us to kind of like this new beginning with Joy's encouragement. Anxiety backs down. The turmoil isn't over quite yet. In a pivotal moment, Joy removes the old sense of self, allowing a new, more complex one to take its place. So this new sense of self is a blend of the many emotions Riley has experienced, stabilizing her and bringing her back from the brink.
Well, and I love this part, Mark, because all the emotions too, they like hug it. kind of hug each other in the process. They all surround it and hug it, and yeah, just like Joyce just saying, like to anxiety, but I think it's to all of them. Like not one emotion can control this.
True.
It's up to Riley, right? It's not up to them.
Yeah. And then like it's that original core 5 at first, and then the new 4 come to kind of join in on the hug there. Then we also see that Riley reconciles with Bree and Grace and nails her hockey game.
Mark, one other thing about this scene too that I loved, that because when Riley's kind of coming out of her anxiety attack, right? And the emotion, and then these little just kind of rays of light come through, and for me, I interpreted that as like when you have a moment of clarity, and I think hopefully that's happened to all of us, but I wish it happened to me more. But
me too.
Where you can see things as they are, and I just loved how Riley apologized to her friends and reconciled, because she just like it's like she figured it, she figured it out. And anyway, I just thought it was so beautifully done, both on both sides, both from the Riley perspective and also what was going on inside her head with the emotions.
Yeah, I got kind of scared in this point for a moment too, because like how that like the sunrise there, and then like it's in her mind, you see like those like yellow particulates kind of coming from. I was like, just wait, is like Joy dying? Like,
oh, interesting.
Because they had that scene about like there being less joy.
Oh, that would have been so sad.
Yeah, which I'm glad it didn't. But that like made me think about that for a second. I was like, that could be something interesting to cover in one of these two, is like when one of these core emotions, like if a core emotion was to like die, like if just someone like just can't like experience that joy anymore. Or I don't know exactly what I thought was happening there, but it like I liked what it ended up being, where it was that Riley wanted to experience joy. So essentially, like Riley's mind calling Joy forward to come to the console there to give her that joy. But I thought that I'm glad it wasn't what I originally thought. Oh my
goodness, yeah, that was so sad.
That would have been a very sad ending. But yeah, Riley makes a new friend, Val, and stays connected with her old pals. So the two generations of emotions find harmony working together, protect Riley's ever-evolving sense of self. So like anxieties, got the massage chair. She's got the anxiety. Speaking of word plays,
it was so clever.
Puns. But so we didn't really mention it, but like the hockey coach in here is Yvette Nicole Brown. I thought she did a great job.
She's great. Yeah.
And I liked, I know like the original film is kind of semi-autobiographical with Pete Docter and his and like just like kind of sort of his daughter. So I do wonder like how much of that, like as far as like the hockey thing is like part of Pete Docter and his family.
That's a good question. Good question. I wonder, if he's had kids that play hockey or. Yeah.
I do like any time a film like highlights hockey, because it's not as often focused on sport in a lot of things. So I'm glad it was in this. But like one of the production things that I thought was interesting about this movie too was that at one point in the development of the movie, there was going to be 9 new emotions, which glad they cut it down to 4, because 9 plus the original 5, that
would have been a lot. Too many.
Although we've talked about like if they do it 3, 4, or 5, I can only see there being
more.
Because as you get older, you're gonna have like anxiety. Even said it. She needs more complex emotions as she gets older at that point. Because so a couple of the emotions that were confirmed and discarded included guilt, who is going to be always hiding behind a stack of luggage. So maybe they were just still inside of anxiety's luggage, and shame, which I think could have also been But like at some point, like some of these feel like part of the same emotion, I guess, but just like a deviation of that emotion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like Embarrassment, I think kind of took the place of
Shame.
some of shame. At least seems like that's how it was portrayed in the
Yeah.
film to me.
So
How I interpreted it.
Yeah. And so like this film, like the first movie was composed by Michael Giacchino. Andrea Dotzman took over for this film, which I thought they did a pretty good job of like keeping those core themes from the first film, and they did a great job.
I like the music too.
The score in this too. Like it kept that bundle of joy like main theme from like the first film and kind of stretched it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now this film has also been doing really well. We're recording this on Saturday, June 15th of 2024. So it's only technically been in theaters for one full day and like half of a day on Thursday. And I guess half of a day as of like right now when you and I are recording this.
Yeah.
But it's like on track to be breaking a crap ton of box office projections. Where like I think it was projected to do 85 million, which would have already been pretty good for this year. And the budget for the movie was 200 million. So I think the last I saw was that like now they're projecting the film by the end of this weekend to be like maybe 130 million.
Yeah, somewhere between I've read between 130 and 150 million, and we'll see. I think it seems like 150, even 130 seemed high, but I'd be thrilled if it's true. You know, if that's really what's going to happen. Wow.
Yeah, it says making it the third biggest animated opening of all time, behind 2018's Incredibles 2 and last year's Super Mario Brothers. So that would be good for the box office this year, because it's been weird between great films like The Fall Guy.
Yeah, like that was surprising that The Fall Guy didn't do that well, because it was such a blast. Like I just thought it was like the perfect summer movie.
Or like Furiosa.
See, I didn't really like Furiosa, but but it was surprising though that it didn't do that well. You know, I expected it to do much better financially than it did.
And I'm especially happy about this because it just seemed, and speaking of The Fall Guy, like that came out like on premium video on demand, like
like 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Like, I was like, that's part of your problem. You're training people that they can just wait 2 weeks. And I know everyone's like in different circumstances with their families, if they have kids, or if they're going to bring those kids to theaters, or if they can't go by themselves because they have kids, they're the only adult, or like they don't want to leave their partner to be alone with the kids just so they can go watch a movie. I know there's all
the stuff,
and people live in different areas where movie theaters ticket prices are different prices depending on where you are. I know I'm lucky to have like the AMC's A list, because that's like perfect for me, because I can see like I think like 12 movies in a month for like $20.
Right.
That's
for like the price of two. You know, I mean, it's so great.
Well, one even
like, for the price of one, like a premium, right? I mean, it could be, it could be close to $20. Yeah.
This video not sponsored by AMC, by the way. So, but yeah, so it's, and then that was the thing too, is like it felt like with some of the films, like Onward kind of got messed up by
the pandemic really screwed things up for Pixar.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, because Soul, an original film, Luca, an original film, Turning Red, an original film, all went straight to Disney Plus.
Disney Plus.
They weren't even like the premiere thing that like Raya or like Mulan did. Like the Pixar films were just like there, which I think was part of the thing that maybe, like, especially so like Lightyear ended up being the first one that, like, the first Pixar film that came back out in theaters post pandemic, and then didn't do great, but I think that was partially again because people were trained. It's like, oh, Pixar movies just come out on Disney Plus now. I don't even have to pay anything extra. I just already paid for Disney Plus. It's already on there. And then Elemental initially
Yeah,
looked,
Elemental was a slow. It took a while.
like it looked like it was going to be a thing. Like, I'm a big fan of Elemental.
I loved Elemental too.
I liked how that was a slow burn. I know some other animation sites would have you believe that it was a box office bomb, but we don't rotate in that way or scope that way either. But
No.
I enjoyed Elemental. I'm glad it had.
I'm glad it finally got an audience.
Yeah.
People figured it out. That is a really good film.
Because that's kind of like how old school box office was, anyways. It wasn't. Oh, you crapped the bed in the first week.
Yeah.
Because the movie was in theaters for like 3 or 4 months, so it had a chance to have like a long.
Yeah, and word of
and there's
mouth has a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, we have all this backup of films from like the past few years that like couldn't get released, or like because of like the actors and writers strike, also that caused another little bit more of like a log jam with some stuff too. So I don't know. I'm glad that seemingly that this is kind of breaking what was happening with this year. This also has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. It's got an A cinema score.
Yeah, A cinema score. So
yeah, I don't always like take fully the Rotten Tomatoes stuff with a grain of salt. Just because some art is subjective. So,
but these are all positive indicators, and this is such a good movie. Like everybody should go see this movie and go see it in the theater. One thing I read, Mark, is that Disney had committed to keep this in theaters for 100 days.
Good.
And
3 months.
That's really good. Like, go see this in the theater. And
that's entire summer.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I saw it in IMAX. You saw it in IMAX. I think this would be good to see it in 3D.
I know. I think it'd be really great to see it in 3D too. When I saw that in the credits, because I don't think that I'm not sure there have been any 3D screenings. At least in my end.
So I might have to use another A-list thing this weekend to maybe go see it again in 3D.
Yeah. How are they playing in 3D at your AMC?
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Because I was trying to. They're playing in Dolby too, so I'm like, do I see it in Dolby? Do I see it in IMAX? Do I see it in 3D? Because they're all covered by the A-list. Again, not sponsored by A-list.
No, but that's so great about the A-list too, is they don't prevent they allow you to see films in these premium formats. That's so great.
I don't know what Prime is for, because I don't have that in any of the AMCs around here. I'm assuming it's just like a bigger theater, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But we have just like little itty bitty AMCs that aren't close to my house here. They don't have any like fancy, auditoriums in them.
So as we close out, is there anything else you'd want to say about the film, or anything if they do make a third one that you want to see in that?
Well, I guess we'll just take number 3, if and when it comes. I mean, this one took 9 years, This is 9 years after. But I just think everybody should go see this movie. It's terrific. Supremely entertaining, touching, and thought-provoking. Really, it's just the stuff that Pixar typically excels at, and this one's just an absolute home run.
Yeah, and apparently we're getting a Disney Plus series of Dreamland.
Oh yeah, Dreamland.
So that should be fun. Maybe we'll see the unicorn again in there. That will be fun. Maybe this will be the inverse for like this film took 9 years to come out, but it was only 1 year in the events of like Riley. Whereas, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be 1 year until we get Inside Out 3, but maybe it'll be a smaller gap of time, but a large for the real world, but a larger gap of time between this film and the next film for Riley's world, for when that takes place. Because I feel like that next one has to be like college or somewhere around there for something that they can do. And that'd be interesting for them to do that, because they haven't really focused on a character that's like that age, really. Like they went up to that point with Andy, at the end of Toy Story 3 and then passed it off to, younger 4 or 5-year-old Bonnie in the Toy Story 3 and 4. So I think it'd be interesting to have like in a little bit more like a young adult character that they could, especially for like the Inside Out films, to see what they could do there. But I'm curious to see what they have in store for that. But so with that, I think that'll do it for us. You can follow Stanford and I individually on social media. We're usually just at our first and last names. So if you're watching this or you're reading the show notes, that's how you spell them. That's how you find us. You can find the show on all of the same places just by, it's usually either Animation Fascination or Animated Podcast. But there's usually a link tree on one of those places that you can just follow. That'll bring you to it too. You can also email us at animationfascinationpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website at animationfascination.net. You can join our Patreon, which is patreon.com/animationfascination, where you can get episodes like this early or extended versions of them. There's an extended version of our Fan Fusion panel up there right now talking about a Goofy movie that's a little bit longer and it's got some fun stuff in there. So, but I think for myself, I'm Marc Vibbert, and for Stanford Clark, thank you guys all for listening, and make sure to tune in again next time. Bye. Bye, everybody. Pouchy says goodbye too.
That's right.